This is a Think Live Be production.
3, 2, 1. Seeking the best. Seeking the best. Seeking the best. Seeking the best. Seeking the best.
Good morning.
Good morning. I had to come over. I was looking at something, doing my research.
Last minute
Last
research.
minute
Doing your
research.
homework on the bus.
Right? Got to make sure I'm ready for the test.
I lived doing my homework on the bus. It's the only place I did it.
No.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, that's not really me, but my brain is a little bit foggy because we just had our client appreciation party, and so
And you were wasted on ice cream.
give me a break. Yeah, it was an ice cream event, so we had our we set up outside under some.
Yeah, that's why.
Well, it's so okay. Let's just describe real quick.
Wipes you out.
We've done this ice cream social for many years now, and we used to do it at this little ice cream shop, which was super cute, but it was very small,
Like
and
a retro kind of old school, like
Yeah.
malt shop kind of a thing.
Yeah, super cute place, but small. Parking wasn't super easy for people, and so we felt like we kind of started to outgrow it. And so last year we did it in our office parking lot because we have this big parking lot, and there's big shady oak trees, and it's a pretty spot. And so we just have it under the shade trees, and we set up little carnival games and have brought in the ice cream truck. And so it's a lot of fun. And it's Orlando, Florida in the summer. So it was like 95 degrees. Who knows what the feels like temperature was.
Yeah, 100% humidity.
Yeah. So we were just drenched in sweat before we even got started. But I brought a change of shirt. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things you have to do when you live in Florida is bring a change of clothes with you.
Change of clothes. And but it was a good event, and my brain is like thinking about all the different little things of like, oh, we could have done this differently, and missed opportunities, and you know,
how can you make it better?
That's what
Seeking the best.
That's what this podcast is all about. Is, you know, we like to talk about how to make things better. We're not going to talk about events though. We've talked about those before, but I wanted to talk about conversion. Pat's already really interested.
Checked out. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, so the podcast, the name Seeking the Best, is all about figuring out the best ways to do things and, you know, how can we improve things? And so I think I've heard a lot lately, like people's businesses are down because the market has shifted, and it shifted. Like, by the way, I feel like, oh, by the way, my name is Catherine and I'm your host of Seeking the Best. And this is my husband, a producer, sound engineer, Patrick.
Hello.
And we are your hosts. I have been selling houses for 18 years, and Patrick has been with me.
I've been listening to her selling houses for 18 years. Yeah.
You know, for the wins and the missed opportunities and the complaining and everything else in between. The crying on the floor. Just kidding. There's no crying in real estate.
No.
But seriously, like, you know, the market shifted, and it's also still a pretty strong market.
Yeah.
All things considered. But I remember, so
it's like when people complain they get the free dessert at the restaurant, and then you're like, last time I got this dessert, it was bigger. And it's like, shut up.
It was free.
You still got a free dessert.
So,
oh, the market's not as good. It's still really good, but it's not as good.
Well,
I'm getting out of the business.
Well, if you don't have perspective, though,
yeah,
it can feel like a huge change.
Yeah, if you only got in the business a few years ago and it just goes up, 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 and you're like, man, this is easy.
Right.
Right.
Like, well, so a mega camp, which is Keller Williams' annual conference in Austin, Texas, is coming up in August. And I haven't been to mega camp since 2019.
Since pre-COVID, right?
Pre-COVID.
Right when COVID was starting.
Well, yeah, the year before.
Yeah.
Family reunion is what I went to.
Right. Okay.
And then came right back, and then COVID happened.
Right.
So mega camp, haven't been since 2019. And so I'm excited to go. And I was thinking about what a difference it is. But like, if you really look at the numbers and you go back to like 19, 18, 17, like those years, the numbers are kind of the same for our area.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is such a stark difference between the last couple of years, like 2020, mid 2020 to like mid 2022.
Right. So if you just go back to the last time you were at Mega Camp and look at the numbers then versus the numbers now, it's basically the same. But there was that middle few years of things were crazy, but now they're kind of back to the way they were. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's just more of like a normal market, but it's so different. And so people's businesses are down though, because, we didn't prepare for that change. But the thing is that I remember going to Mega Camp and the last family reunion, since we mentioned that too, and taking classes on the shift, right? Like, cause it happens. It always happens. Every 7 to 10 years, there's some sort of cycle, and we were overdue for some sort of cycle. Right.
We were expecting the cycle to happen, and then COVID hit and it disrupted
and
what the normal cycle would have been. It wasn't bad. It would just,
it still shifted. It was just a different type of
what
shift.
What they were expecting. Right.
So like it went to all of a sudden, I was chatting with somebody yesterday at the client appreciation party, because, of course, when you have those kinds of events, what's the first question people ask?
How's real estate?
How's the market? Right? Like they don't know what else to talk to you about.
Yeah. That's all they know you through. So,
but if they're just a client, right? Yeah. If they're not friends too. And,
even friends,
yeah. Like, I mean, they know you're
Did
having
Jess ask how the market was?
No, well, she didn't, but, but actually, I take that back. She did. Because, it's like a question you ask. It's my business. That's what we're here for. We're here for a business event. But the thing is, like, I was explaining to this guy who may have a need in the next year or two. And so a year or two ago, or like 2 years ago, let's say 2 years ago, there would have been like 30, 40 people for one house. Like, and I mean, legitimate making offers buyers, not just the number of showings.
Sure. You guys had to have like systems in place of how to organize all of the offers and be in how you contact all the agents. Yeah.
You had to create different ways. Well, not everybody did, right? The people who weren't seeking their best just said, oh, well, I'm just only going to tell the person whose offer got accepted, and everybody else, forget about you.
Right.
And then we would get angry because we wouldn't hear back from people. Yeah. So it was like, it was such a different time where if there's 30 to 40 legitimate making offers buyers, and now on the same type of house, there's still potentially multiple offers on a very nice home priced well in a good location where there's lower inventory. There still could be multiple offers, but it's maybe 4 or 5. But that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
The way that feels and the craziness around it. And so even though, like, I have great perspective from doing this 18 years, I know what it feels like to have 0 offers for months
and have a house that's priced right
and
in
have
the right
it right.
neighborhood,
yep.
all of those same things.
And the prices are dropping so fast that you're having to actually adjust. Like, it was priced right yesterday. Mm-hmm. And now we've got to adjust the price already.
Right.
And it still wasn't a low enough adjustment to meet the buyers where they were.
Well, that's an extreme buyer's market. And what you were describing a minute ago was an extreme seller's market. And what it sounds like now is sometimes the buyers get a little something extra. Sometimes the sellers get a little something extra. No one's really thrilled with the outcome, but everyone can take the outcome. So that sounds normal to me.
Yeah. And people's businesses are down. And that's, I think, a combination of a couple things. One is that there's still, when the market's going up and increasing, there's still more agents getting into the business.
Yeah.
Because they see opportunity.
Sure. And
so when the market changes, those agents are still competing for less business than exists. Mm-hmm. And so you've probably in your area have more competition than ever before. And yet there's less available business than there has been in the last 4 years, Sure.
That makes sense.
There's that. And then there's just not preparing for it and not being able to have.
It's like, It's like low hanging fruit. There isn't as much low hanging fruit so agents who can just kind of sit back and wait for the phone to ring or just run into a buyer somewhere or whatever. All of a sudden there aren't as many and they have to look. And so your business is down because stuff isn't falling in your lap. I always used to say, like, we have this street in downtown Orlando called Orange Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And Orange Avenue is lined with bars left and right. And there was a time when just tourists and the college and people would just go out let's just go downtown and we'll walk up and down Orange Avenue and go into the bars. And I used to say how easy it was if you had a bar on Orange Avenue because people just walk in and it's simple. What's hard to do is have the bar that's off of Orange Avenue where you have to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
Except what happens is when people don't go downtown anymore and the people who were just sitting on Orange Avenue waiting for people to walk in, they never had to work those muscles. They never had to. And so those businesses were the first to fail. Whereas the ones who were on the outskirts that built up their regulars and built and had a clientele following and all of that stuff, when the downtown shifted, those bars still did well because they had that built in where it was fair weather friends on Orange Avenue to the bars who didn't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
This is the same kind of thing. The agents who just sat there and just thought, well, this is easy and just waited. Now, all of a sudden, they never exercise those muscles of conversion or of working on their past clients or any of that stuff. And now they're feeling that.
Yeah. In case you're just listening for the first time, Pat's really good at analogies.
No, geez.
So he'll find some example to explain a situation, and it always makes perfect sense.
Not always, but sometimes.
90% of the time, 99% of the time. But that is true. It's true. And so, and even like seasoned agents, it's like you get comfortable.
Yeah, complacent.
And what happens is if you don't start preparing it, then there's going to be a period of time where you're trying to catch up and trying to figure out, like, because what happens is it's not just that there's less available buyers shopping for homes. It's that their needs are different. The conversations that you would have with them, what services they need, what they're looking for, what offers you would make to them, those all are different today than they were 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Why was there so many people looking and buying homes a couple years ago? Because so many more people could afford to. Then I've said this multiple times, probably on the podcast too, but I mean, we basically just during that time period where there was like 2.75, 2.5, 3% interest rates, we were just stealing buyers from the future. Because they wouldn't have otherwise been able to afford to buy at that time. And so now, and they did. So we just sort of stole a little bit of demand. Right,
of people that would have been saved up their money and could only afford to buy a house now.
Yeah.
They bought it then.
So, so the conversation, all of the things that go along with conversion and getting, because you could go out, you can still do open houses. You're still going to have listings and have people calling on listings. But if you're finding that the conversion is not the same, it's not just because there's less buyers and more competition. It's because you probably didn't update to make sure you were having the right conversations, update the scripts and dialogues and like practicing those different conversations. Mm-hmm. And then
and be very clear, you're talking about conversion. So we're talking about people that you're actually talking to and then getting them to come into the office or to get that listing appointment.
Well, converting
or getting the listing. I'm sorry, not the listing appointment, the listing.
Well, so converting is
maybe that
taking a lead to an appointment,
right? Taking
an appointment, and that's converting to appointment. And then converting from an appointment is I've met with them in person and now I've taken them as a client.
Right.
And that's a conversion. And then taking them to writing an offer or, selling the property is another conversion. And so if you're running, this is a business and those are numbers that you should be tracking and looking at regularly to know what you need to change.
Yeah, what your conversion rates are. What's the national average and where are you?
Yeah. And then if you're finding that you're falling behind, the national average. So for example,
right. So I guess what I was just trying to be very clear that we're not talking about lead generation, like how do you get in front of these people? We're talking about after you've already done that.
Right.
We're talking and the conversions themselves of and I'm talking to them now. Can I get them to come into the office or can I get into their house for a appointment?
Let me get into your house. let me get into your house. What if I said that as I was talking to a seller lead?
It could work. Depends on how confident you are.
They're like, I'm thinking about selling. Listen, let me get in there. And
well, that could work actually. It depends on who you are,
I guess. But yeah, so you're all, I mean, every step of that's the sales pipeline, is like every step of the way you're converting people to move them to the next step of the process. And you need to know what's a good target. I think that's where when you first get into real estate, you don't even know that you should be tracking numbers, number one,
right?
Unless somebody is teaching you or you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
You don't even know that you should be tracking numbers. And then once you finally learn that and you start to,
I think people think I don't need to do that because I know what I've done. And it's like, you need to have it written down. I can hear people going, why I did 12 sales last year. Why do I have to, what do you mean tracking numbers?
Sometimes excuse me, I've got like a little,
I know you keep coughing into the microphone.
I'm sorry. Can you edit those out?
I can't pull them all out.
That's all that talking yesterday that I was doing.
Yeah. That ice cream, you're all phlegmy.
So I every time I talk to an agent that I'm kind of looking at them and saying, could I recruit them to the team? Or they're asking me about team opportunities. Whenever I'm having those conversations, I'll often ask, like, what are your goals for the year? Strictly because I'm curious, like, what have you, what's your plan? Like, what are you working towards? Is that something that I could help you with, But most of the time people are like, I just want to do more than last year. Well, how much was last year? How much more than last year? Like, you got to know where you're going or where you're trying to go. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. But yet so many people just wake up in the morning and aimlessly wander around, letting other people dictate their schedule. And, oh, this person actually responded. So cool. I've got a buyer. And now I'm just going to spend my entire day trying to find them a property.
Yeah.
And then go show them properties the next day.
It's like there's no school.
Well, I know. I mean, there is. You do have to. I think in this industry, you have to seek out your education.
Yes. And that's, no one tells people that, so they just wander aimlessly until they stumble across something like this podcast, or pick up the MREA book or something like that. It's like you just kind of aimlessly wander until somebody says, "Hold on a second, you're not doing this right."
Yeah. Or I always hope that when I ask, because obviously like most of those people don't get hired, and or they're not even looking, like they don't know what they want as far as their goals go. They certainly don't know if they need or want to be on a team. Like they just have no clue what they're doing. That's, I think, like 90% of agents out there. And so those people don't necessarily get hired, but I always hope that at least by me asking that question, maybe it made them think for a minute that, hey, I probably should have a specific goal that I'm working towards.
Yeah, I'm hoping that happens on this show too, and that people listen and they just kind of open their eyes to one little piece that they weren't thinking about, and then they find the rest of their way on their own. But, just like treating it like a business, and that, I think with that floundering, like getting over that floundering of just kind of day to day, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to run over here and do that, and not having the structure of a business and not understanding that that's what you're doing here. Hopefully those things kind of click a little bit. We help people with that, and then, they can figure out the rest on their own through trial and error.
Well, so with conversion, if you've got a goal in mind, then you can work, you can start tracking and work things backwards and figure out, how much do I have to convert? Like, how many people do I need to talk to in order to hit that goal? And so tracking becomes this fun thing that
Oh, geez.
this fun, exciting thing where you're like,
all right.
no, just listen, just listen.
It was a fun thing. Now it's fun and exciting.
Hear me out.
All right.
Imagine a world.
Uh-huh.
I feel like the movie guy.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a world where you knew when you woke up every day, if I just talk to 16 people, I'm making up that number.
Mm-hmm.
If I just talk to 16 people today and ask them about their real estate needs,
Mm-hmm.
I would sell, I'm making up numbers, 30 houses.
Right.
Imagine a world where you knew simply that if you did this, the outcome would be this.
Well, it would make things a lot easier when I woke up in the morning because I'd have goals that I knew were tangible versus I guess I'm just going to call people randomly until somebody says they want to work with me and not know what that's going to be and how many people and what and stuff. If you said to me, well, if you just talk to 16 people and you could get a lead and you'll get a lead, or that's the average, or that's my average
appointment.
Right.
I'm making up numbers, but
Yes.
the point is if you talk to,
I would know if I kept track of how many people I talked to set an appointment, then I would know what my numbers were. And then I could sit back next year and go, okay, I look at my numbers. I made for every 20 people I talked to, I set an appointment. So if that's the case, then I know how many people I need to talk to every week next year in order to set the number of appointments I need to set, because I know if I set this many appointments, this many people close. And then I can say, okay, so how many closings do I want to have next year? And then work my numbers backwards. That's how many appointments I need to set, which means this is how many people I need to talk to and how many of those people per week. And then I would know exactly, at least pretty damn close, how many people I needed to talk to close the number of sales I wanted to do.
Yeah, but it's
versus just waking up in the morning and I guess I'm just going to call these people.
Well, but it can just start like that. It's like, just start tracking how many people you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I'm going through the week, I'm writing down, okay, so far I've had 40 conversations and I've set one appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now you have your initial conversion. Is it a great conversion? No.
But it's a conversion and you know the number and that's good.
And then you keep tracking. And over time, you start to see where you need to practice. That, I think, when I said exciting,
Mm-hmm.
is like there isn't some school you can go to say, here is exactly what to do. I mean, there are plenty of resources, like read the MREA book. You can take classes, especially at Keller Williams. You can take a class that's like built around that model. There's plenty of resources and classes and things, but there isn't this like one definitive thing that if you just do this, it's going to work for you. You do have to do some trial and error because you might find that you are really good with your sphere and you talk to 10 and you set an appointment or get a referral.
Mm-hmm.
Well, awesome. Now, where might you want to focus your efforts more and building more sphere or maybe
practice more at open houses?
Well, that's what I was going to say. So maybe you do open houses and you set 1 in 20 and you want to improve that. Well, you can either do more open houses because you'll have more people, or you can
and more practice.
Yeah, which works on multiple levels. Or you can improve potentially your follow-up plan. Like how are you that's where the conversion comes from. It's all in the follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that like you could sit down and call people for 2 weeks and not set anything. It's over time that you see these patterns and know what's working, what's not working.
What that says to me is in order to have over time to see a pattern is you have to be consistent.
Yeah.
Because without the consistency, there's no way to measure, right?
Yes, you have to be 100%. I think that's
so like your follow-up has to be the same follow-up with if it's the follow-up on open house leads, for example, isn't the same every single time. then there's no control group. Like there's no way to see what's working and what isn't. If you do it different, if you keep changing it and doing it differently.
Can I tell you, one of the things that frustrates me as having a team and having other people come in to the organization is that they don't follow the plan. And I'm not saying all the time, but it's about consistency, right? So if you don't do the exact things over and over again, then you don't actually know if the numbers are right. And I guess that's where you can improve, is what I was saying, is like make the follow-up plan better. But you can only improve upon things when you're doing it consistently enough to see what's working.
Well, it's like, it feels like second nature to me personally. I'll just go into my thing, because what it sounds like to me is technique. Like when I have a technique in painting, I have my style and my technique of how I do things. If I do it a certain way and I'm like, I'm very happy with the way this turned out, but I just kind of experimented through the process, I can't repeat it because I don't know how I got there, because I was just experimenting. So part of building a style and building a technique is doing it the same way every single time. And then you're allowed to play with a certain part of it, because then I can remember, oh, in this particular one, I did this, which was different than the last time. I'm not happy with that. I'm not going to do that again. And over time, your technique gets honed and better and I can't think of the word. It's like streamlined and stuff. So this is the same thing. You have to do it the same way to build your technique to see what works, so that down the road you know it so well that when you start to tweak things, you can see, did that tweak help the overall thing or did it hurt it? And then tweak it again. But you have to have that first baseline of technique figured out.
Well, that's where scripts come in, and canned responses or template emails.
Sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It's like
those are like the paints, right? If I'm constantly changing my color palette over and over and over again, well, then I can't, you can't get into any sort of technique or rhythm with it, because you're changing all of this stuff all the time, you know?
Yeah. I think this scripts are there. Like, people are so resistant to scripts when they first get into real estate, because they're like, well, I don't want to sound salesy. Okay. Well, the only way you can consistently have the same conversations and ask the same questions and make sure that you are doing things the exact same way so that you can track those results is if you're using a script.
Saying the same things.
Yeah. And it really, like, at some point, if you're new to the business, at some point that will click for you, where it's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, scripts are the way that I do things the same way, just like,
canned responses and and your system of how you do things.
Again, if you're treating real estate like a business, which you should be, because it's yours, then you have to follow the same processes for everything, just like any other business. Like, apply it to any other business, fast food, fine dining. I'm using restaurants because I'm hungry. Any business, if this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and that's what makes it work. That is the business, by the way. The process is the business that makes it duplicatable, that makes it saleable, all of those things. So if you're an individual agent, that's the first thing you need to start building is, what is the follow-up plan for specific lead sources to get to your conversion rates? And then you can tweak once you've done it consistently for long enough to see how it's working. And then go from there.
And speaking of, let's take a break.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's take a break.
Hi guys, it's me, Catherine. As savvy listeners know, I'm the team owner of the Think Live Be team based in Orlando, Florida. We are always looking for talented, experienced agents who are ready to double or triple their sales. Listeners to this show already know we have the systems and support in place so our agents can plug and play and take their success to the next level. With over 18 years of fine-tuned marketing campaigns and lead generation techniques, we have the very best systems for getting your production to the next level in 90 days. Our agents' main responsibilities consist of lead generation and conversion, showing properties, making offers, and negotiating contracts. If you're ready to take your real estate career to new heights, contact us today at thinklivebe.com/hiring. Hey listeners, it's me, Catherine, your host of Seeking the Best, the podcast. I'm thrilled to bring you the Seeking the Best YouTube channel. Here we'll serve up tidbits, tips, tricks, and hacks in bite-sized videos designed to help you thrive in the fast-paced life as a real estate agent. Need a quick strategy for lead generation or a savvy trick for staying organized? We've got you covered. With powerful insights you can apply right away. No fluff, no fuss, just practical videos that fit into your busy schedule. So whether you're at the office, on the road, or in between showings, our videos are here to give you the edge you need. Just search Seeking the Best on YouTube and subscribe now to join me as we unlock the secrets to being a successful agent.
And we're back.
Oh, I just picked up a glass of water.
Oh, I wasn't looking at you. I was looking at the screen. Sorry.
Okay, and we're back. So the process is the business is what I was saying before the break.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to like, yes, you need to track your numbers. And the way to make sure that you can do that consistently I think there's two components. Number one, you need some sort of tracking system to write down and keep it in a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
That I used to use these, it was a sheet that it was called the Daily Grind. And it was just a 1-page document that I would carry around. And it was kind of a combination of like other things that I had seen that were similar with like how many calls did you make? How many dials? How many appointments? And like other things that would have gone on during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And you would, check off if you did these things. And so I just kind of combined all the points that I thought were important into one sheet that I could carry with me.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem with that. What if you lose that thing?
Yeah.
Then you lose everything.
Yeah.
And we're in the 21st century, right?
Mm-hmm.
When do we cross into the 22nd century?
What? Not for a long time. Did you have on that sheet, was that like every day you had a new sheet, or was it broken down into like weeks or months? Like what's the best way to kind of, I know that you don't use that anymore, and I'm sure you're going to get into what you actually do.
So I had it set up so it was a month, and it had 31 lines on it basically.
Okay.
And it had space to tick off my dials, so like little tick marks,
mm-hmm.
like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then slash through 5.
So as you were doing your dials, you would it wasn't something that you came back to at the end of the day and say, how many dials did I make? You kind of just kept that with you all day long, and just whenever you were doing stuff would just tick off whatever.
Yes. And then there was space for writing in 10 contacts, because at that time, that was what I found, after, again, I put the sheet together after time,
mm-hmm.
but I would write in the name of the people that I talked to in the contact space. And then at the end of every day, there was space to count the dials and contacts and write them in another little column. And then at the bottom, I had space to write how many open houses. So I had, let me count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces for open houses.
Okay.
That way I would do 2 per weekend.
Right.
And so I had those written out at the address, how many people came through, and the kind of note space to say like, what were the results? And then appointments, like how I had space for appointment set. And then my goals at the bottom, like what was the goal versus the actual, and then a little space for notes. And I would just carry that around.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
But you know me.
Yeah. She loves her paper.
And it would get like crumpled in the bottom of my purse
After that one was done, it would just end up in the trunk of the car, and then there'd be 10,000 of them.
Yes.
Old ones.
So, well, yeah. And then you'd find like half written ones because I would like lose the first one. So paper in today's day and age is stupid.
Yeah.
Because it can get lost. And I say this to, I seem to like attract people who like paper, even if they're younger than me.
Yeah.
And they'll write all these notes and notebooks and stuff. And I'm like, great. And then how do we know what you said to that person?
That's the thing. Once you have a team, you can't have them write on paper because there's no way for you as the team owner to see where the agents are with their process, because if they're keeping a private notebook of that, well, then how are you supposed to know anything? You don't.
And that's the thing. When you are an individual agent, you figure out the system that works for you. And then if you join a team, you use their system.
Right.
Okay. And then if you grow a team, you have to scale your system to accommodate other people.
Right.
And so that's where I started tracking in Google Sheets, because it's super easy. It's accessible anywhere in the world. It's anybody can use it. You don't need to know formulas. All you have to do is input the data.
Yeah.
And nothing gets lost. The agent, though, that's then tracking the numbers, they still have to input it at the end of every day.
Sure. But they'd have to do that if it was a notebook.
Yeah. So you can still on a piece of paper or whatever works for you. Most of the time nowadays, I use the internal notes app, and I'll just write down dials and then contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just put 1, 1, 1 as I'm going through the day.
Mm-hmm.
That way I don't lose track
of
what I'm doing.
The numbers are super important. So we said consistency, right? So if you have an agent on your team, or you're a single agent and you do it today, but then tomorrow you only did part of it, and then the day after that you forgot, and then the day after that you did it all. Great. You turned in your numbers. Awesome. And then the day after that, now you kind of drop the ball a little bit. And then after a few months, and we look back to try to track to see where to improve or how to improve or what's working or what isn't working, you can't, because there hasn't been any consistency. That's why what she was saying before the break about like working this all the way down to scripts and stuff. It's the only way you can make sure that you can see where the problem is, but even more importantly, where you're successful and how to exploit what you're good at, right? Well, it's the only way that you can really, really track it for real, right? Because people's idea of, it's that thing of like fishing, when they're like, I caught a fish and it was this big. And it's like, if you go back and measure, was the fish that big? No, it wasn't, because you have this inflated idea of what you're good at. And you think, oh, I'm really good in front of people. And it's like, well, let's track those numbers and put that to the test and see if that's the case. So I can see how people don't want to do this, because some realities are going to come forward that maybe they don't want to see.
And also, speaking of that, you have to track the days that you're not consistent too. It's like, if you only make 3 calls and talk to no one, put it on the page. It doesn't serve anybody, including yourself, to just not track sometimes, because you get behind, or you
don't want to see it.
You don't want to see it. Like I think that's part of it, is like you're building a discipline of like, if you just do one thing besides obviously lead generating, because that's the only way you're going to get business, besides lead generating, if you do nothing else but actually reach out to people looking for business and track your numbers, you will be more successful than if you didn't.
Right.
If you didn't.
Right.
Like just by doing those one things, because that's the only way you know what to do next, which is, how do I improve? So if you're tracking your numbers and you're like, okay, I'm finding that I'm talking to 40 people, like we were saying before the break, 40 people, and I'm setting one appointment. How do I increase those numbers? Because that's a lot of people.
Don't you look at you look at the national average and say, well, if I'm talking to 40 but the national average is, let's say, 20, then I have to talk to twice as many people than the average agent in order to set an appointment.
So
How good am I at these scripts? Oh, I don't have any scripts. Maybe that's why.
Well, so the start there, right? So then if you don't have a script at all, well, that's why you have to talk to so many people because you're just winging it.
Yeah.
And so what you're getting is the low hanging fruit that anybody could get. You're not a skilled person at that point. You're just getting lucky. It's just volume, which at least you're doing that.
Yeah.
At least you're talking to as many people as you
'cause
possibly can.
There's a lot of agents who aren't good at the conversion, have terrible conversion rates, and they don't talk to people.
But
and it's that's why they do 6 sales a year, 8 sales a year.
But you're going to find really quickly that if you can only get an appointment in 40 conversations, that you're going to run out of people.
Yep.
Like you just are going to. And so the only way to improve is to be able to get appointments and referrals in less conversations. And the only way to do that is to practice what you're saying to people. And so I think the next part is because we're talking as if you're just having conversations and setting. And like I said, it's all in the follow-up. So you have to have the plan in place for the different types of people you're talking to. So typically people will say, like, don't go overboard when you're creating follow-up systems and having scripts available. Like, don't have 20 scripts, have like 2 that you learn and you memorize and you internalize. And so 2 would be, I'm giving maybe 3. I would say 3. 1 being asking your sphere for referrals, like get a very good script for that. And that'll serve you well over your entire career.
Do you have an example of that?
Well, it depends on where you are in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're brand new to the business, you need an introductory one that says, hey, I've gotten into real estate and I'm really excited to grow my business. You know, who do you know from work or church or whatever that may have want to buy, sell, or invest in real estate. But as you get further down the road, you might need to have another script or 2 scripts that you can use throughout the year. And then you need a script for buyer leads and you need a script for seller leads. And on those scripts, it's not even a script as much as a series of questions.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the things that you need to practice asking so that it comes off natural and not like you're grilling the people.
Right. It
has to sound like you're just having a conversation with someone. So I think that's where the practice comes in. Because if I just said, where are you moving? Where are you looking to move? Well, why are you doing that? Well, how much money do you have to spend on this house? Like that starts to sound.
Yeah. Well, it's
especially when you don't know the person.
It's what a newer agent always complains about. I sound salesy. I don't want to sound salesy. Right. So
you need to have a buyer type script and a seller type script. And then if you just internalize those 3 versions, then you can get going. And probably you don't really need to change the buyer and seller one, except maybe the very beginning. So for example, if you're, let's say you have a listing and somebody's calling in on the listing. Well, so the introduction, if they're literally calling in, is you say, oh, that's a great property. We're getting a lot of calls on that. Give me one moment while I pull up the most accurate details for you. So tell me more about that. What had you interested in this home? Mm-hmm. While you're looking up the details, And so the intro.
She's asking a bunch of open-ended questions, getting them talking about what their needs are. So then she's listening while she's looking this up to be able to know what to say next.
Yeah. And then if I met them at an open house and I'm following up on the open house, well, that introductory part is going to sound different. It's going to say, hey, we just met this weekend at 123 Main Street. I'm just curious, what did you think about the home?
Open-ended question.
I'm just getting feedback about the house.
I'm not interested in whether or not you want to buy a house. All I want is feedback.
All I want is feedback. That's my favorite open house script. And I find it works really well because people love to complain about what they don't like. And
everyone has an opinion, right?
And most people come to the open house aren't actually going to buy it. So they're going to be willing to tell you how they hated that kitchen and blah, blah, blah. And it gets them talking. And that's really the goal there, is to get them talking so they feel more comfortable when you ask them the next question. And
which is?
Well, it could go different directions. It depends on what they say. However, it's one of a couple. It's one of 5 things.
Okay.
L, P, M, A, M, A.
Right.
Darn it. That's 6. But the last one's appointment. But it's, location. So, okay. Yeah. So it sounds like that house was definitely not for you.
But the location. Did you like the location?
That's close-ended.
Oh, right.
So what other...
I don't do this for a living.
Yeah. Pat's just here for fun. But so, yeah, great. So it sounds like that house is definitely not for you. What other areas of town are you looking?
Right.
That's location. Price. Well, yeah, that home was listed for $500,000. How'd that fall within your budget? Motivation. So what has you out looking at open houses this past weekend? That will get you started on motivation. You might have to go deeper and say, well, what about right now makes it a good time for you to buy a home?
Mm-hmm. You're trying to get the answer to every single one of these questions before they get off the phone.
Yeah. And in there though is the rapport building part. That's I think the rapport building part. What?
That's the part you can't teach.
I mean, you can. It's just is it the part where it's like, if you want to be a skilled salesperson, which is, by the way, no matter how much you don't want to sound salesy, you are a salesperson. It's literally
it's what makes if somebody who you're talking to on the phone doesn't realize that you're going through the LP mama and you can just weave this into a normal conversation. That's when you're a good sales agent. If you're going number 1, location, number 2, right? And you just go through those things and you're like, this sounds salesy. And it's like, yeah, because you're reading it off a list.
Well, especially because if you don't
have the conversation and kind of weave through this stuff and ask open-ended questions and get all of your information, that's what makes a good salesperson. And the only way that you can do that is by practicing over and over and over again.
You definitely have to practice because it's in all of the other moments where you are going to actually convert because you're going to get all the information, but they're going to have some sort of connection enough to say, yeah, I would spend 45 minutes to an hour with this person to see if they'd be a good fit.
Right.
Like if you can't make that feeling happen, then they're just going to hang up the phone and say, yeah, I'll keep your number if I need anything.
Yeah. So if you're calling somebody and that you're getting that, or you're getting we're looking for a 3-2 over in the east side of town. Send us stuff if you find anything, and you find yourself like getting their email address and then sending them properties thinking you have a lead. And that was the conversation you had. Your conversion rates are going to be low.
Well, you're not going to have a conversion rate because you're doing a bunch of work stuff for people that aren't your clients. And then those people
hoping that, well, if I send them stuff and I show them things, then we'll have a more rapport and then they will be my clients. Yeah. If that's your kind of approach to things, you're doing it wrong. Well,
and so then there's a seller. So at a minimum, have a good solid script to talk to your sphere, to ask them about real estate. Have a good solid introductory script and the questions for the LP Mama for buyers. And then same for sellers. Now, seller leads are harder to come by, in my opinion. I've always felt that way, even in different markets where there was more inventory, because they don't come out of the woodwork and say like, hey, I want to move. They talk quietly amongst themselves until they list it because they don't want people in their business. Whereas buyers are like excited and they start telling their friends and family like, oh yeah, we're going to buy our first house, or yeah, we're moving out of state or whatever. So the sellers are harder to find. So it's less likely that you'll be getting a call unless it's a past client or repeat client. It's less likely that you'll be getting a call that you're going to take and say, like have to have a solid script. I mean, you're going to have the same series of questions that you want, but if you're going to be lead generating for sellers, you're going to need some sort of script for them. So then you have to identify what type of seller am I lead generating? Am I lead generating expireds for sale by owners? Am I lead generating a specific like demographic group that's moving and I'm doing like circle prospecting?
Absentees.
So then those introductory conversations are going to sound different because obviously like for sale by owner, if you're trying to work those, the goal is different because they have told you they are trying to sell themselves.
They don't need you.
They don't think they need you.
Right.
So the conversation is going to sound different.
And an expired would be like, our last relationship with the realtor went terribly.
Right.
Because our house expired.
Right.
Right.
So then in that situation, you have to know what they're going to be saying to you and have a script for that. So for example, like expired is they're probably going to say, well, what are you going to do differently? Well, you better have an answer for that.
Right.
Or a question.
Right.
And so have yourself three solid scripts.
What did the other agent do that you didn't like?
Well,
like kind of a thing,
I would say, well, like the first thing I might say if somebody says that is like, well, that's a great question. I think the first thing I would need to know is what was your agent doing to sell your home? What was their marketing plan? And they're gonna be like, what are you talking about?
Right. They didn't have one. Right.
Oh, okay. Well, so that's exactly why we should get together.
Right. Because and I've heard Catherine do this multiple times. That is the line. That's exactly why we should get together.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're not giving them, you're trying to get the appointment. Right. So you're not going to give them all of this information. It's always comes back to that's exactly why we should get together, because you want to be able to give your listing presentation to everybody who's involved, not the one person on the phone. There's probably a spouse, and that you want to be in the house, and you want to be face to face, and you want to have a back and forth, and you want it to be on those terms. So you're not giving a bunch of information. You're not telling them your marketing plan over the phone. You're always coming back to that's exactly why we should get together. You know what?
This brings me to a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's on the same topic.
Okay.
I think I waver back and forth on this is because of my own personal experiences. So let me explain. Sometimes people will ask you like a direct question, like, well, what's your commission rate? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to tell them my commission rate. I want to get in front of them and I want to present because what does it matter what my commission rate is if you don't even know what I'm doing to sell your home?
Right.
Right. Like you don't have any frame of reference for the value of that rate. So I don't want to just tell somebody that. But then I go back and forth because I'm like, sometimes we get in our own head and we think that whatever our rate is that we're charging, that they're going to say no to it. And then they're going to not want to meet with you. And then, so you don't want to tell them. But like, for example, we've been shopping for AC units. Mm-hmm. If for a rental property that the AC has now gone out.
Yeah.
And we were shopping before it went out, and then it went out like right as I was making the decision. So that was annoying. But anyways, what I wanted the AC companies to tell me was a ballpark price based on the size of the house so that I could judge whether or not, number one, that we could do this right now mm-hmm. and that we should proceed. Because again, mm-hmm. this was before the AC actually went out. And
because we had no frame of reference of what a AC of this size would cost.
Yeah.
So we just want a ballpark.
I just want a ballpark. I'm not going to hold you to, I just want to know a range. And the other part was like, I want to make sure that we can do it right now and all of that. But also if you told me like this is a small little house, if you told me $20,000, I'd say we don't need to talk further because I'm not that stupid. Yeah. Like I have a general idea of where it should be. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to waste my time or the tenant's time with somebody who's going to overcharge me. And I know that they are based on the number they give me. So long story short, the company that we hired was the only one who was willing to give us a ballpark range. Mm-hmm. And then they went out, they did their full assessment after I talked to a couple others.
And it was more.
No, it was at the high end of
the ballpark.
Of the ballpark.
Right.
Which, I mean, come on, we always assume that anyway. We know. Yeah. But it was at the high end of the range. However, it was in the range and they gave me what information I needed. Like, I'm not stupid as a consumer. I know generally like where it should fall. That was what I was trying to assess, was that I was correct. I was trying to validate that I was correct. that we
Right. We
could
just
do
didn't want
it.
our time wasted.
Yeah. And the tenant.
And the tenant's time wasted and all of those things, because so many people don't get multiple estimates.
Yeah.
They just get one, and companies know that.
So-
So they just give the high end, and we're super busy, and they'll either take it or they won't. And it doesn't no skin off our nose if they don't. So just goose it up 20%.
So I've toyed with this a couple times, and I found in general, people, they want to know it's for the same purpose. Like they want to make sure that you're a reasonable person and that they're not going to have you come out and find out that you're actually charging way more than what is sort of the average when you go Google it online and you find different information. Like they want to make sure that it's falling somewhere around there. So I think it's okay to tell people. I wouldn't get super specific. Like I would probably, it depends on what you're doing and what your services are. But like if you have different packages, then tell them, well, we have different packages that range in depending on what we're doing for you.
On your property and what we need to do. Yeah.
So that's exactly why we should meet, so we can discuss that and decide what's going to be the best package for your specific situation. I have, tomorrow at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m., which works better. Because, and then if they push you a little bit further, well, like what's the, then, ultimately you get to decide. But I think that if
I think you just tell them, because it's like
the other thing is like you could go out to a situation where their expectation is not
half.
even in the same ballpark.
Right. Exactly. Where they want to do, where they're looking at half, and then you wasted times putting together the listing presentation, drive into their house, and they have completely unrealistic expectations of what you should be.
It could open up an objection that you can now handle. Like
That's
if you shut it down but you can't get the appointment. If you say like, oh, well, that's exactly why we should meet. We'll get together and talk about it. If they say, oh, okay, then great, go meet and do your presentation. If they say, well, if you can't tell me that, I don't want to meet with you.
Right.
Well, I mean, you probably just go ahead, and then they might say, oh, that's way more than I want to spend.
Yeah, good. You dodged a bullet.
Well, that's definitely potentially dodged a bullet. However, it's about skill, right?
Yeah, of course.
And say, you know what? I understand, you may have heard XYZ, whatever their reasoning was. And you may, have you heard that I actually sell my listings for on average 3 to 4% more than the average agent does.
Right. Which in the end, you will walk with way more money than just taking a lower.
So what would you do with another, $15,000, $20,000 in your pocket? Mm-hmm. That's exactly why we should get together. So I can show you how I can actually make you more money.
See?
Yeah. Because it sounds to me like that's what's most important, right? So it's having the introductory script of the type of lead that you're going to be calling, the questions that you need answered to set an appointment, and then 1 or 2 objection handlers to getting the appointment, because you might have to close a few times, but generally speaking, they're only going to give you probably 1 or 2 objections. And so you just need to be prepared with those things. And then, so we didn't, I don't know if we're running out of time or what, but we didn't get into the follow-up plans that I planned to. So we might have to do that next time.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
So the point is like,
this episode is a little bit about conversions and a little bit about setting appointments.
Well, so since we got into all that, we'll pick back up next week and talk about the follow-up steps. So you've got your,
it's part 2,
coming soon to a podcast listening device near you,
in your pocket.
So you've gotten to this point. You have a place to track your numbers. You have scripts that you're going to practice, and on the seller script, the questions. I love that they're pretty much the same as the buyer. It's just kind of a little bit different. So it's LP Mama, but if you add in the T, so LPT Mama. So you want to know the location of their house, right? That's important. You want to know the price that they think their house is worth. So you had asked them like, well, I'm just curious, what do you think your house is worth? And they'll tell you like, oh, well, that's what you're coming out for. Well, I know, of course. And I'm going to bring that information with me. I want to know, kind of just curious, like what you
Where
think.
you are, yeah.
Yeah, like are we talking like 500,000? Are we talking 600,000? And then they'll
We'll see
tell
how
you.
close we are to each other.
And then, so you want to know location, price, timeline. So,
That's the T.
in an ideal world, when are you hoping to make this happen or make this move or sell your home, whatever you want to say there. And then, what has you thinking about selling your house, or what has you making
Motivation.
You're finding out the motivation. You're going to want to know if they haven't. Obviously, if you're working on setting an appointment and they're agreeing to that, you want to know how many other agents they're interviewing with.
Mm-hmm.
And when. That's the ideal thing, so that you can be last. You're going to want to know if they owe money on it. That's the M, mortgage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, great. So you've owned this home for 10 years. So do you currently still have an outstanding mortgage balance? I don't ask like how much at that point, but you do just want to know, do they own it outright, or do they have a mortgage to repay? And then appointment.
And it's actually good not to ask, like, I don't mean like you couldn't or anything, but just asking like whether or not they own the home outright. And then they go, or you're asking if they still have a mortgage. Yeah, we do. And then you go, okay. And then you move on with your next thing instead of trying to get into the meat of it. Is kind of nice from the homeowner's point of view, because you ask a question and you kind of came at me with a little bit of personal information that you're asking me, but then you immediately walked away from it and didn't go any deeper. And it's almost it's like fishing, with where you kind of get them on the hook, but then you let them go back out. You don't keep reeling them in and reeling and reeling and reeling. You let it kind of go. I could see how that's like a nice, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but
yeah. Well, the thing is, so that's somebody I don't know though. Like if it's
right, that's what I mean.
If it's a past client, like a repeat,
different.
I mean, I already know. Especially if I sold them the house, right? Like I know.
Well, then they didn't. Yeah.
But I mean, we've already talked financials. Like there's a lot of built-in rapport and trust that you can get into things a little bit faster. But yeah, I typically don't on somebody I don't know. I just want to know if they have a mortgage that will need to be paid off. And then, you're going for the appointment. And in that, you're going to find out, where they're moving to. That's part of the motivation part. They'll tell you like where they're moving to. So are they a buy, sell? Because then that sort of could change things. But having those questions internalized. So no matter where they go, because some people will get off script, they'll start telling you about the house on a seller. They'll start telling you about all the improvements they've made. And like, oh, I put in, gold floor and
gold floor.
Yeah. I've heard like this one guy I just was thinking of that was just telling me all these improvements. And I'm like, I'm just thinking in my head, well, if you did all of this in this neighborhood.
Yeah. You made some mistakes, buddy.
You're crazy. But yeah, so you're learning all the things you need to know to go into the appointment, and do you want to set the appointment? And those are the first two components of getting yourself set up for conversion, is tracking your numbers. So you know how many people you need to talk to get an appointment, and having 3 solid scripts that you're using repeatedly the same exact way over and over again.
Right.
And within those, you do need to have some objection handlers, like I said, which I think we'll just get into that next week, because what happens in the follow-up is that I might meet let's use an open house, because it's always such a good, easy example, because you've actually met those people in person. And so let's say I met somebody and they said they need to sell their house and they're looking to buy something new. Awesome. Buy, sell, my favorite. And you get back from the open house and you call them. They're not always going to pick up on the first try. That would be awesome. And yet it's just not realistic. And so it's not just, you could be all prepared. You could know that script inside and out, and you could just be all ready to go, and you got your tracker out and you're ready, and they don't answer. Well, so what most agents do, well, maybe they'll call again the second day. and then they'll forget to call again.
And
They
then-
might send
and
an
then
email
there's
the
a new
next
open house
week,
this weekend, and I'll just deal with those people.
and they don't keep up with, either they don't have a plan for follow-up, and so they call a couple times and then they lose that sheet of paper where they wrote down the name and blah blah blah, or they have a plan but they allow that task to go overdue, and then they get busy with the low-hanging fruit instead of the follow-up consistently over time, which is the only way that, as we've said, like, this is the only way to know if it's working or not.
Right.
Anyway,
Okay. We'll get into it a little bit more next week on all of that stuff.
we'll talk about follow-up plans specifically, like how many touches and different types of sources and how long you need to follow up with those people on average to actually get them to turn into business. Because as much as it would be awesome if every person you met or talked to for the first time just said, yeah, I'm ready. But that's just not the reality.
Yeah.
The reality is that 19 of the people that you talk to in
Right.
a day
aren't interested.
and then the 20th is ready now.
And the actual reality is that it averages out to 20. So you might have to talk to 40 to get one, and then you all of a sudden you pick up the phone the next day and you get another one out of nowhere.
Sure.
It averages out to that, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, the question you are about to hear is true. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Question from the web. I started in real estate a year ago. I have all of these ideas for projects I want to start, i.e. a newsletter, YouTube, etc. But in the year one review I did with myself, I realized I haven't been able to get many of them done. This is because I've been very overwhelmed with the other tasks I have as an agent that I don't know where to start. Analysis paralysis of sorts. I've been researching project management tools. That way I can create a timeline and due dates for tasks and organize my to-dos, but wondering what software is best for a solo agent.
Okay. Well, been there, done that, still doing that. I'm definitely like, I love ideas. I love thinking. I love planning.
I love thinking.
I do. It's one of my strengths. And so, yeah. So the thing is that's great. So a couple things I hear in this. Number one, that you have ideas and you're thinking about the big picture. That's awesome. The second thing I heard is that you had an evaluation with yourself. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like you sat down and said, how did I do this year?
You know how many agents don't do that? Most.
So great job. You're already on the right track for just sitting down and evaluating yourself and thinking about how can I be better. So that's awesome. As far as the question goes for like management tools, I mean, you can do two things that are free right out the gate. One is Trello. So you can build a board with dates and due dates and a timeline of activities and things. They do have paid plans, but you can do it for free. The other one is you can just literally write out in Google Docs or Word doc for that matter. Maybe you use Google Sheets because then you can put dates, but you can just write out a timeline of things. Like don't spend money on a project management software plan. I don't think that's necessary at all. I really don't. Mm-hmm. And I understand you've got multiple things, but what you need to do... It
does sound like a Trello thing to me.
What you need to do, though, is decide of the ideas that you have, which one is the most likely to produce the most dollars, right? What's the most dollar productive of those things? Mm-hmm. And do that first. And write out what needs to happen to make that project succeed.
Right. You don't want to be one of those people who buys a house for renovation and then starts in the bathroom, gets a little bit of that done, then goes into the kitchen, gets a little bit of that done, then takes a wall down. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have a bunch of stuff started and none of it's going to be finished and it's all going to be a mess. And then by the time you get back to it, you're going to have a new idea of what to do. And you're going to throw out everything that you did on that and start over. Right.
Well, also pick one
and then do it until it's done. And then or set up, for example, like the YouTube thing or whatever, until it's set up and ready and running and it is going. Then do the next one. That's you can really, when you're running your own business or doing your own thing, you're talking to somebody who is a painter. It's like, I always finished a painting before I started a new one. Otherwise, I'd have a studio full of half finished paintings and none of them would be done. I couldn't sell any of them, right? You have to get the first, just focus on the one. You keep thinking about the other ones, all the other stuff. Keep thinking about it in your head. Like, maybe if I do it like that, or if I change it and kind of shift the idea, keep thinking about all of that stuff. It's good. It keep you motivated and stuff. But pick one and then do that. And the Trello thing is just a really nice, easy way to keep things organized and see where you are.
So the one of my favorite quotes is that success is sequential, not simultaneous.
Right.
Pretty sure I read that in the one thing. And the reason that always resonates with me is because I am guilty of that. Like, you get all these ideas and then you want to start all of them. And if you don't actually finish any of them to completion, then it was all for nothing. And so you have to remember that success happens over time as you do things consistently, sequentially, not simultaneously. You can start all these projects at once and you will not see the success because you're working on too many things. It's the one thing. Like, pick one that's going to produce the best results and start there. Mm-hmm. And write out what needs to happen by when would you like this project to be done and implemented?
Yeah. And then work your way backwards. What do I need to do by this month? Then what do I need to do per week? And then what do I need to do per day?
Yeah.
And then you'll set up a schedule and then you just follow the schedule.
Yeah, for sure.
Flow in. Flow in. Flow in.
Small win. Kat, you got a small win this week?
I don't remember if I said this last week. I got to start writing these down so I don't repeat myself.
You have so many wins, you have to write them down, or so little wins that you're not sure if you said it.
I'm not sure if I said it. I've been on a new fitness I eat really well. Like, we eat well. Pat makes dinner every night. And like, I have like either yogurt or oatmeal for breakfast. And then I usually pack a healthy
we eat
lunch.
Whole Foods and stuff.
Yeah.
Not Whole Foods, the grocery store, just in general.
Yeah, we eat well. But I've been just focused more on making sure I'm getting the right amount of protein and then doing a certain amount of exercises per week. And I haven't really had any alcohol. I went like a full month with zero alcohol and now a couple more weeks. And I've lost like 6 pounds.
Yeah.
In that time frame.
Looking good. Looking tight.
Yeah, I got a long way to go.
No.
A long way to go for what my goal is. But it's nice to see some progress. And
yeah. When you do it's like when you're dedicated to something like that and you don't see results, it's real easy to get, poor me and just kind of say this doesn't work and quit and stuff. So seeing results in what you're doing is always positive. It gives you the motivation to keep doing it.
So to take it to the small win level, because like that's kind of a big win.
Yeah.
But to take it to the small win level is when I'm doing this resistance training and I have increased my weight on a couple different things, not all of them. Like, I have like back issues, so I can't do certain things with heavy weights, but I've increased my weight size on a few of the exercises. And it's like that small little change. It's like, that's progress.
Yeah.
And I have to stop and take that moment and say, that's a small win.
Yeah, that is. And my small win is, this isn't the win, but I got a new desk and I got a new chair from my office, which I've been using, a antique desk that I've had in my family since I was a little kid. That's not the win. The win is the stuff was delivered and there weren't any scratches or broken pieces in the desk or in the chair. And that is so rare to get something and be like, oh, great, it's not broken.
I know.
Or there isn't a scratch on it and stuff. That is my small win.
It's actually a pretty big one.
Yeah. Hey guys, remember to rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. It really helps new listeners to find us. If you'd like to send us a question from the web, read Kat's weekly candy bag blog that goes along with today's episode, buy merch, or learn more about us, go to onseekingthebest.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Seeking the Best Pod with new videos dropping every Thursday morning before lead gen. And for Kat and myself, thanks for listening, and we'll figure this all out next week.
Bye.
This has been a Think, Live, Be production.